You clicked because somewhere in the back of your mind a name is sitting there, a surgery a doctor once suggested for you, or for your mother, or for the man you married 40 years ago. And a quiet voice asked, "Is this really going to help, or is this just what they do next?" Here is what I found. 5 of the most common operations offered to people over 65 have been tested against fake surgery, real incisions, real recovery, no actual repair, and in trial after trial, the real operation worked no better than the pretend one. Patients healed the same. I found the proof buried inside medical journals most people never open, hidden in plain sight behind words designed so you would never go looking. I am going to take you to the exact studies, the exact years, the exact page where a surgeon admitted the knife did nothing. It starts with a paper published in July of 2002, and it ends with a 30-second test you can do at home this weekend, in your own kitchen, with a chair and a clock. No doctor required to run it. Anyone with an ordinary home can do the whole thing. It began for me on a rainy afternoon when my uncle called, scared, holding a hospital consent form for a knee operation, asking me to read it because the words made no sense to him. I read it twice. And a single phrase near the bottom, "Outcomes may vary," sent me down a hole I did not climb out of for 3 months. So let me show you what I dug up, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The first thing that stopped me cold was the knee. My uncle's surgery was called arthroscopic debridement. They go in, they clean out the worn cartilage, they smooth the rough edges of an arthritic knee. It is one of the most common orthopedic procedures offered to older adults on the planet. Millions have had it. Maybe you have. Maybe you are scheduled for it right now. But here is the clue that made me sit up. In July of 2002, the New England Journal of Medicine, the most respected medical journal in America, published a study led by a surgeon named Dr. Bruce Moseley, working with the Houston Veterans Affairs Hospital and Baylor College of Medicine. He took 180 patients with arthritic knees. He split them into 3 groups. 2 groups got the real surgery, but the 3rd group got fake surgery. The surgeons made the small cuts in the skin. They talked through the motions out loud so the sedated patient would hear the sounds of a real operation. They splashed salt water to mimic the sound of the joint being flushed. And then they sewed the knee back up, having done nothing inside at all. Then they waited 2 years and measured everyone's pain and walking. The people who got the fake surgery did just as well as the people who got the real one. In some measures, at certain points, the fake surgery group actually reported walking and climbing stairs slightly better. 2 years later, no difference you could count. The knife had changed nothing. Think about what that means. A man goes under anesthesia, takes on every risk of an operation infection, blood clots, the danger of sedation on an older heart, recovers for weeks, and gets the exact same result he would have gotten if the surgeon had simply poked his skin and gone home. I read that paragraph 4 times to make sure I understood it. Now, the defenders will tell you the technique has changed since 2002, and for certain torn menisci there is a role. Fair. But for the plain, worn-out arthritic knee, the exact reason it is sold to most seniors, the evidence never recovered. A later review in the same journal in 2008 backed it up. The surgery for arthritis of the knee simply does not beat the fake. So I had one common operation that failed the honesty test. And I thought maybe it was a fluke, one strange result in one strange corner of medicine. But that is not what I found. Because the moment I pulled that thread, the spine unraveled next. There is a procedure for the crumbling spine of older people, especially older women with thinning bones, called vertebroplasty. When a vertebra in your back collapses from osteoporosis, one of those painful compression fractures that steal an inch of height and leave you afraid to move, the surgeon injects medical cement into the broken bone to shore it up. It sounds brilliant. It sounds obvious. Pour concrete into the crack. For years it was hailed as a small miracle for back pain in seniors. Then came August of 2009. 2 separate teams, publishing in that same New England Journal of Medicine on the same day, did the same brutal thing they had done to the knee. they ran sham trials. One team was led by Dr. David Kalmus. Another, out of Australia, was led by Dr. Rochelle Buchbinder. In the fake version, they numbed the skin, they pressed on the back, they even opened the cement so the patient would smell its sharp chemical odor in the operating room, but they never injected it. And once again, the result landed like a slap. The patients who got the real cement and the patients who got the fake procedure reported the same pain relief, the same improvement in movement. Both groups felt better because backs heal with time and because being cared for is itself powerful, but the cement added nothing you could measure. Here is the part that got under my skin. By 2009, this operation was already being performed on tens of thousands of older people every year at a cost of thousands of dollars each time. A whole industry had grown around pouring cement into the spines of the elderly, and only after all that did anyone bother to check it against a fake, and the fake tied. So now I had two, the knee and the spine. And I started to notice the pattern in how these surgeries were described to patients. Nobody ever said, "This may do nothing." They said, "We'll go in and fix it." The language always promised repair. But the spine was about to get worse, because vertebroplasty was the small operation. The big one was waiting. The big one is spinal fusion for lower back pain. This is major surgery. They bolt vertebrae together with metal screws and rods so the painful joint can no longer move. It is one of the most profitable operations in modern medicine, and one of the most common offered to adults over 50 with chronic back pain. The hardware alone can cost tens of thousands of dollars. Recovery takes months, and here is what I found buried in the follow-up data. For back pain caused by simple wear and tear, the ordinary aging spine, not a broken bone or a spreading tumor fusion, often does not beat a good patient program of exercise and physical therapy. Study after study through the 2000s, including work reviewed in the journal Spine and large comparisons in Europe, found that a serious rehabilitation program produced results as good as the surgery for many patients, without a single screw. Worse, there is a name doctors use so often, it has its own abbreviation, failed back surgery syndrome. The pain that comes back, or never leaves, after the operation that was supposed to end it. Depending on the study, somewhere between 20% and 40% of these fusions leave the patient in the same pain or worse. They gave up their back's ability to bend, they took on the risk of major surgery, and roughly 1 in 3 walked away no better. Let me tell you what I found about the heart, because this is the one that most people simply refuse to believe when I tell them. There is a procedure called a coronary stent, placed during an angioplasty. When an artery to the heart is narrowing, the cardiologist threads a tiny tube up through a blood vessel and props the artery open with a little metal scaffold. For someone in the middle of a heart attack, this is genuine life-saving medicine. Let me be absolutely clear about that, because it is true and it matters. In the middle of a heart attack, a stent saves lives, but that is not who gets most of them. A huge share of stents go into people with stable chest pain, the kind that comes on with exertion and eases with rest. People, often older, who are told their artery is narrowed and they need it open before something terrible happens. It feels like plumbing. Narrow pipe, widen the pipe, problem solved. It makes such obvious sense that almost nobody questions it. So they questioned it. In 2007, a large American study called Courage found that for stable heart patients, adding a stent to good medication did not reduce heart attacks or extend life compared to the medicine alone. Enormous news, widely ignored. And then in 2017 came the study that finished it. Researchers at Imperial College London ran a trial called Orbita, and they did the unthinkable, a sham procedure on the heart. Patients with a single narrowed artery and stable chest pain were sedated and taken into the lab. Some got the real stent, some got the catheter threaded in and then simply removed, with no stent placed at all. Neither the patients nor the doctors measuring them afterward knew who got which. The result, published in The Lancet, was that the real stent did not improve exercise time or chest pain significantly more than the fake procedure. The thing millions believed opened their arteries and saved them from doom performed no better than a pretend version for stable disease. Now hold all 5 in your mind at once. The arthritic knee, the cemented spine, the fused back, and the stented heart in the stable patient. 4 of the most common, most trusted, most expensive operations offered to older people, each one tested against a fake, and each one failing to clearly beat the fake for the very patients it is most often sold to. That is 4. I promised you 5. The 5th is not a single operation. The 5th is the thread that ties every one of them together, and it is the most important thing on this entire trail, so I am going to save the heart of it for the end, because it is also the thing that hands the power back to you. But before I get there, I have to answer the question you are already asking. If these operations so often fail, why do they keep happening? Who decided you would not hear about the sham trials? And that is where the story turns from sad to infuriating. Because the trials I just described were not hidden in some obscure vault. They were published in the most famous medical journals in the world. Any doctor could read them. So why did the surgeries not stop? Follow the money for a moment, because it is not complicated. In the American system and in many others, surgeons and hospitals are paid for doing things. A procedure done pays far more than a conversation about why a procedure might be a bad idea. An hour spent bolting a spine together bills for many times what an hour spent teaching a patient to strengthen that same spine bills for. The entire machine is built to reward the knife and to starve the conversation. That was the moment my little investigation stopped feeling like curiosity and started feeling like something closer to anger, and it made me realize that everything I had dug up needed to go somewhere people could actually use. Not just watch it once and forget it. I put the most complete version of this research, the studies, the sham trials, the home tests, and the step-by-step prehabilitation plan into a book I put together specifically for people in exactly your situation. It comes in 3 parts depending on how deep you want to go. First Fixes, which gives you the quick, actionable tools. Deeper Fixes, which walks through the evidence behind each surgery. And the Full System, which puts the whole framework together from kitchen table tests to the 4 questions you bring into any appointment. You can find all 3 listed in the description below, and I want you to have whichever level fits where you are right now. But let me bring you back to the trail, because the story was about to get worse before it got better, because I had been looking at bones, and I had not yet looked at the heart. And there is a second, quieter force. It is called the sunk cost of belief. A surgeon trained for years to do these operations. He watched his teacher do them. He believes sincerely that they work because he has seen patients feel better afterward. But he is seeing what the sham trials expose patients feel better after fake surgery too. The relief is real. The cause is not the knife. It is time, attention, hope, and the body's own healing. The surgeon mistakes the natural recovery for the result of his skill, and he passes that belief to the next generation of surgeons, and nobody in the chain is lying. That is what makes it so hard to stop. Sincere belief plus a payment system that rewards the procedure equals millions of operations that a fake could have matched. There was one group of doctors who got angry about this, and they left me a document. In 2012, an organization called the ABIM Foundation launched a campaign with a strange, blunt name, Choosing Wisely. They asked medical specialty societies to each publish a list of common procedures that patients should question, treatments doctors themselves admitted were overused and often useless. Those lists are public. Anyone can read them. On them you will find, in the specialist's own words, warnings against many of the exact procedures I just walked you through, the imaging that leads to needless back surgery, the stents for stable disease, the interventions that do not extend life. The doctors wrote down the truth. They just wrote it somewhere they knew you would never look. So let me bring this to your kitchen table now, because this next part is for you specifically, the person watching this in an ordinary home, on an ordinary income, who is thinking, "This is all very interesting, but I cannot fly to Imperial College London, and I cannot argue medical journals with my surgeon." I hear you. This part needs no journal, no money, and no professional. You can do it tonight with things you already own. Here is what I learned about who actually gets hurt by these operations, and it changes everything. It is not really about the operation. It is about the body that goes into it. The single strongest predictor of whether an older person survives surgery well or falls apart afterward is not their age on paper. It is something doctors call frailty. And frailty can be measured cheaply, quickly, at home long before you ever sign a consent form. I found this in the cardiac surgery research in work led by a doctor named Jonathan Afalalo, who studied thousands of older heart surgery patients. He found that a simple measure of how fast a person walks predicted their risk of dying or suffering major complications far better than the fancy risk scores the hospitals were using. Slow walkers had several times the risk of fast walkers, even when everything else looked the same on paper. The body was telling the truth that the charts were missing. So here is the test. It is called gait speed, and it is almost embarrassingly simple. Measure out a straight, clear path in your home. A hallway works, a long room works. Mark a starting line and mark a line about 5 paces further, roughly 15 feet, and know the exact distance. Stand behind the start. Have someone say go and start a clock. The stopwatch on any phone works. Walk at your normal, comfortable, everyday pace. Not fast, not showing off, just how you would walk to answer the door. Stop the clock when you cross the far line. Now do the arithmetic. Divide the distance by the seconds. If it takes you more than about 5 or 6 seconds to cover those 15 feet, if your comfortable walking speed is slower than roughly 1 meter, a little more than 3 feet per second, that is the flag. In study after study, that slower speed marks a body that struggles to bounce back from major surgery. It does not mean you can never have an operation. It means you are exactly the person who deserves a long, hard conversation before anyone cuts, and exactly the person the sham trial should worry the most. There is a second test that is even easier, and it comes from a paper published back in 1991 by 2 researchers named Podsiadlo and Richardson. It is called Timed Up and Go. Sit in an ordinary dining chair with armrests. Place a marker on the floor about 10 feet in front of you. On go, stand up. Walk to the marker at your normal pace. Turn around, walk back, and sit down. Time the whole thing. If it takes you longer than about 12 seconds, that is your body waving the same flag reduced reserve, higher surgical risk, the frailty that no consent form will measure for you. I want you to understand what you are holding now. For nothing, in your own home, in under a minute, you can gather the single most powerful piece of information about your own surgical risk, the exact information the payment machine has no incentive to hand you. You can walk into that appointment already knowing whether your body is the kind that thrives after surgery or the kind that the evidence says should think 3 times. And here is how you use it, because a number is only powerful if you know the question it answers. When a surgery is offered, you ask the surgeon 4 plain questions, and you write down the answers. First, has this exact procedure ever been tested against a fake or sham surgery, and what happened? Second, what happens to someone like me if I do nothing, or if I try exercise and time first? Third, out of 100 people my age with my frailty, how many are helped, and how many are harmed? And fourth, the one that changes the room, what would you choose for your own mother? That last question does something remarkable. It moves the surgeon from the machine that rewards the procedure to the human being who knows what the evidence actually says. I have watched people ask it and watched the answer change. Now you have the walking test and the 4 questions. But I told you the 5th failure was the thread that ties it all together, and that I was saving it. So let me take you to the end of the trail, to the thing I did not expect to find. Here is the secret hiding underneath all 5 surgeries. For every single one of them, the knee, the vertebroplasty, the fusion, the stent, the trials found the same buried treasure. The patients who skipped the surgery or got the fake and instead moved their bodies, got care and attention, and gave their systems time did just as well, in some cases better. The alternative that quietly matched the knife over and over was not another drug and was not another gadget. It was structured movement and time inside a body that had been prepared. And that leads to the discovery I built this whole investigation to hand you. It is called prehabilitation, and it flips the entire story on its head. For a century, surgery has treated the older body as a passive thing to be repaired. But researchers studying frail surgical patients found something the payment machine never advertises. If you take those same weeks that a person would otherwise spend simply waiting and worrying before an operation, and you fill them with walking, simple strength work, better eating, and breathing exercises, you can move a frail body up the scale, you can raise that gait speed, shorten that timed up and go, and dramatically cut the odds of complications and the days spent in the hospital afterward. Studies of prehabilitation before major surgery, including trials in abdominal and cancer surgery through the 2010s, found that patients who spent just 4 to 6 weeks preparing their bodies had meaningfully fewer complications and got home faster than those who simply showed up on the day. The same weeks, the same person, nothing purchased. The difference was that one body walked in prepared and one walked in as is. Put it all together, and here is the answer the whole trail was pointing at. Measure your frailty at home with the walk and the chair. If the flag is up, do not rush to the operating room and do not necessarily rush away from it either. Spend the next 4 to 6 weeks doing the exact thing the sham trials proved was doing the healing all along. Walk every day. Stand up from a chair 10 times, twice a day to rebuild the legs. Eat enough protein to hold your muscle. Practice slow, deep breaths to strengthen the lungs that anesthesia will test. Then remeasure. If your body climbed the scale, you have lowered your surgical risk for free. And in a great many cases, you will find that the pain that sent you toward the knife has eased on its own because the movement was the medicine the whole time. That is the thing they buried under the word outcomes. That is what my uncle's consent form was hiding behind 3 small words at the bottom of the page. My uncle never had the knee surgery. He did the walking. 6 weeks later, he climbed the stairs to my kitchen without the cane he swore he could not live without, and he handed me the folded consent form and told me to throw it away. If you feel a little cheated right now, sitting there realizing that a chair, a clock, and 6 weeks of walking can rival operations that cost tens of thousands of dollars and carry real danger, hold on to that feeling. That is the feeling of getting something back that was quietly taken from you. Not a miracle. Just the plain truth about your own body, the truth that pays no one to be told. You are the kind of person who always suspected the most expensive answer was not automatically the best one. You are the kind of person who wants to know why before you let anyone sign you up for anything. That instinct you have, the one that made you click that instinct, is not paranoia. It is the last line of defense the payment machine cannot bill you for. So tell me one thing in the comments, because I read them and this audience knows things I do not. Which of the 5 surprised you the most? The fake knee surgery from 2002, or the sham heart procedure from Orbita in 2017. Type the name of the one that made you say out loud, "I did not know that." And if a doctor ever offered you or someone you love one of these, tell me what they said when you asked why. Those stories are how the rest of us learn. If you believe, like I now do, that real, useful, life-protecting knowledge has been quietly filed where ordinary people would never think to look, then come with me. This channel is a small group of us digging it back up, one buried document at a time, and handing it back around the kitchen table where it belongs. Subscribe and stand with us, because the next trail I am on is about a single word that appears on hospital discharge papers for older patients, a word that sounds harmless, that most families sign right past, and that I now believe quietly signs away far more than anyone realizes. I found where it started, I know the year, And once I show you, you will never sign that page the same way again. If a doctor ever hands you one of these 5 consent forms, you'll want the deeper version I saved inside the Timeless Ways circle. There I lay out the season-long schedule for each surgery, step by step. Ask me your own question, and I answer you myself. A real person, not a machine. Folks like you already belong here with me. Just point your phone's camera at the code. Cancel any time with one click.